Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you from wherever you're joining us today. My name is Mosunlayode. I'm the Executive Director at African Philanthropy Forum, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the third in the series of our conversations on gender justice and digital technology this year. We started these conversations last year, but I would focus on the conversations we've had this year. And essentially the Gender Justice and Digital Rights series that we're hosting is designed to explore, discuss, and promote philanthropic activity at the intersection of these two important areas. And largely what we want to achieve is to ensure that members of our community who are typically funders and philanthropists, we want to ensure that they understand the space, that we demystify the space, they get a good sense of what it means to engage in the space and to support proximate organizations at the forefront of addressing some of the pressing issues that we have when we talk about gender justice and digital technology. And today we're going to be discussing how philanthropy can contribute to digital safety and gender justice. We often hear that women, some women would shy away from being online because there is harassment online, and this would limit the opportunities that they have, that they typically would have accessed if they were online. And we would want women to be free to be who they want to be, to do what they want to do, to access whatever information that they want to access, without fear. And that's why we're having this conversation today. And we have an exciting lineup of speakers that have diverse experiences in this space, and you would learn more about them as we move along. But what I will do at this point is turn this over to the moderator, Dr. Grace Gitaiga. She's the CEO and convener of Kenyan Information and Communications Technology Action Network, who will not only be the moderator today, she would also double as a speaker. Welcome, Dr. Grace.
Thank you so much for that very elaborate explanation. I want to welcome everyone and request that because we will not have enough time to go through a round of introduction, that you put both your names, and I see most of you have done that, but in brackets, please indicate if you are from an organization so that we know who is in the house. I think that will help us, see the sort of representation in here. Now, like has been explained by Mutsun, we are going, this virtual convening aims to increase our knowledge or the knowledge of philanthropists, from us who are practitioners and funders and even donor organizations on some of the challenges that are faced by women and girls in the Africa digital landscape, basically highlighting the urgent need for philanthropic intervention. And then in the course of the conversation, we hope to identify actions that can be taken, such as regulation, social norm transformation, etc. And, what are the key areas where philanthropy and stakeholders interested or involved in the space can provide support. And finally, we hope that you will be able to highlight potential entry points for funders to invest in this, in organizations that are working on these initiatives, and those that work in gender and technology. So welcome again. I will request, please indicate your name and in brackets the organization that you represent. Don't worry if you don't represent any organization, but it's a good way for the host to also see the number of organizations. This conversation is going to take 1.5 hours. So one of the rules is that I will request, if you're not speaking, please mute off your microphone. Then when we come to Q&A, we will request people to raise up their hand. And then you can also put in your question on the chat. And the panelists will be responding as we go on. I think the other thing that I need to tell you, just bring your knowledge, bring your perspectives. We want this conversation to be as organic as possible, and we want it to be as stimulating as possible. At this point, I want to introduce my panelists. So we have, so this is the run of the show. Mosun has already done the introduction, so we need to get into the panel session, which will go on up to about 40 minutes. And then we will have a Q&A session, and then we will close where we will ask each panelist to just do one sentence that is a call to action, and we will hand it over back to Mosun to just do the official closing. So at this point, I would like to invite Marianne Juguna, who is not just a Kenyan, but one of my mentees, to just say what she does. I think it's important so that I don't have to say for her. Marianne?
Hi, good evening, good morning. Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam. Thank you, Gigi, for that. My name is Miriam Juguna. I'm a community manager at Shecode Africa Nairobi, which is our independent chapter under Shecode Africa, the Nigerian chapter. We empower women in the tech ecosystem by providing them the support that they need, mentorship, and also upskilling opportunities for them to better themselves in the tech ecosystem. Thank you so much for hosting this conversation. I look forward to an impactful conversation ahead. Back to you, Jackie.
All right. Then I would like to invite Roslyn to do the honor of introducing herself. Karibu, Roslyn.
Thank you, Grace. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Roslyn Odoyo. I am a senior program officer at Mozilla Foundation. So we exist both as a corporation, Mozilla Corporation and Mozilla Foundation. And what we try to do as a foundation is to center a lot of our interventions and a lot of our support on the ways in which communities are impacted in real life. And so we do that through various ways, including funding, including fellowships and accompaniment strategies, as well as philanthropic advocacy. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much. We'll straight away go to the first question. And, for the benefit of those who may be new to these discussions, what exactly is digital safety? And can you profile one reason it is important for proximate organizations and funders to be interested in promoting digital safety, and how your work ties into this objective? And I think I will invite Marianne to actually do that honor before we pass it on to Roslyn.
Thank you so much, Gigi. I think I'll explain from an analogist perspective. In the current world right now, we have rights that enable us to be safe and also to guide us on how we interact with people. When we look at the digital space, is a whole world in itself. It's an online world, like how we'd call it. We need to make it safe so that everyone can coexist in a peaceful way for us to be able to enable each other to grow and also to prevent some of the crimes that may happen. The same thing that we have here in real world, we have crimes happening day in, day out. The same way in the online world, we have different crimes happening. So when we talk about digital safety, it is what precautions, what regulations, what effects do we put in place to make sure that world is safe.
Okay, we need the person to switch off to mute their microphone. Go on, Marianne.
as I was saying, it's more of we have two realms here. The online world, we need to make it safe for everyone to peacefully coexist so that everyone has equal rights or even equal opportunities for them to thrive in the online world. Yeah, I think that's my basic definition of what I understood when it comes to digital rights that we can impose to make sure that we are safe when we are online. Over to you, Gigi.
Okay. And why is it important?
Why it's important, it's fact on fact, like for you to be safe and for you to thrive and for you to be free and independent, you need a safe environment for you to thrive. For example, we've had these conversations of whereby women are the most affected in the digital space or in the online world. How can we best ensure that this does not happen? How can we best ensure that everyone feels safe and having their information online or even them participating in any avenue when they're online? So I think it is safe. We need to make it safe.
All right, fantastic. Over to you, Rosalind.
Thank you, Gigi. So I think when we think about safety, and in the context of, if we think about what our physical bodies experience as safety, I perceive that the same way we have physical bodies, we do have digital bodies. And this is exactly why digital security and safety is important, because if you consider what safety, or the unpacking of safety, it's about access, it's about prevention of harm, and this can include things like harmful extractionism. This can include targeted bias. This can include mental and physical mental harm that manifests physically as well. And then it's also about empowerment and access. And so when we think through why digital security is important to us as human beings in the context of our digital bodies, is because a lot of access to the rights that we should enjoy as human beings. So the framework is always around like human rights, and human rights exist because we recognize there's a global recognition of the fact that as we exist as people, we are entitled to a way of living or a way of life that affords us a level of humanity or humaneness. And a lot of times that access to the things that allow us to thrive, as Marianne said, that allow us to exist and embody our fullness in the time that we have here on earth, is centered on safety. And so safety is a huge cornerstone to access to wellness in life, generally speaking, in the physical and digital.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Rosalind. And I can just give a quick roundup, from our work at Kictanet. We run a digital safety program, and we've been working with different, we've actually been working with women in all their diversity, mainly training them on cyber hygiene and on digital security. And so for us, when we look at, how do you then interpret what digital safety is? We've come to the realization that it's the practices and the measures to protect individuals. And it's not just protecting them, it's protecting personal information. Because, for example, now Kenya has a Data Protection Act, so there's that protection of personal information, privacy, which is actually enshrined in our constitution, and the overall, just like Rosalind has said, overall well-being, while women engage with platforms, digital platforms and technologies. And one of the things that we train women on is when you're sharing, women share too much information. So if you go, for example, on FB, the women share the photos of their children, they share baby bumps, they share where they're having lunch or where they're hanging out with their friends, and that has a risk to it. And so our call is for them to be very careful, to think, what are the implications before sharing, so that it's not just a sharing that has not been thought through that may subject an individual to online attacks. So I'll just summarize it that way and say that for funders and for those of us who've been trying to get funders to support our work, I think it's very important, to look at digital safety as crucial, because it ensures a secure online environment, reducing the risk of cyber threats, harassment, and data breaches. And this protection is essential for maintaining trust and enabling the safe use of digital technologies for women. What we have learned is that once women are attacked, they actually sign off from their digital safety. And yet, for example, the Kenya Constitution provides, in its Bill of Rights, that right to even engage not just physically, but online. It allows the freedom to associate, and you can associate with any communities online. And it also allows for the freedom of expression. And we've seen, the digital platforms have allowed us to engage in a way that has been unprecedented, so that, we are also providing information as we get information from others, as opposed to what we were so used, it was only the media that deals with that. So, at KicTanet, our work actually focuses on pushing for comprehensive digital safety protocols. Currently, we are having changes, we are having political challenges. But before that, the previous minister had put up a team to look at the teams, and we actually put a very comprehensive input, so that, to consider women and to have like the cybersecurity law provide for women operating online. We've also been educating users on best practices. We also actually encourage them not to leave the online space because it's their right to be there. So basically pushing for policies that safeguard those online policies. So we believe that by doing so, we contribute to a safer digital ecosystem that believes, everyone, including funders and organizations, can actually support safety online. We've been going through, we are waiting for a new cabinet secretary to be confirmed, and she did articulate that one of her agenda is to ensure that safety online, especially for women. So we look, we look forward to something that is practical. So I go to the second question. Again, Marianne, I come to you. What are the challenges faced by women and girls in accessing and using digital technologies safely? And would you share examples of how digital safety issues have directly impacted the ability of women to leverage opportunities in the tech sector, to drive home the point about its importance? And then once Marianne responds, we'll come back to Rosalind, and I'll also be checking on whether we have someone who is online and would want to respond or to contribute to that. Over to you, Marianne.
Thank you so much, Gigi, for that. Before we speak about, or before we add the word safety let's look at the digital accessibility. One of the key issues or the key challenges that we have right now in Africa as one is more of we don't have proper infrastructure for us to access or for us to actively participate in the digital and online spaces. For one, internet penetration has been an issue that we've been trying to combat. Kenya right now, we're on the right track and we're trying to bridge that gap and that divide. Another thing is lack of resources for us to be able to participate, or for women to be able to participate online. Because when you look at some of these gadgets or some of these devices in Africa, we can look at the cost of some cell phones that we have here in Kenya, which a smartphone is the minimum or the entry point for you to actively participate in the online world. So for you to be able to access that, that's a challenge that we have ideally. Access to infrastructure, internet penetration, and also awareness is another challenge. Then after, we can now add in the safety bit. There are those who've been fortunate enough for them to participate in the online space. But again, awareness and lack of knowledge on how to best ensure they have digital space hygiene, or to even ensure that their rights are well protected, or they're not even aware of their digital rights that they have. So awareness is one of the key issues that we are trying to combat, apart from the other ones, which are now a lack of internet penetration and devices. So when we look at digital rights, as for example at Kickternet, we are advocating for digital rights and for equal opportunity for everyone to participate, and again ensuring that women are equally represented and they feel safe in the space where they choose to express themselves, and we have proper laws that protect them in case of something. Because when you look at statistics, one of the key challenges or one of the highlighting facts that come on board is that women face a lot of cyberbullying, or women will decide not to retract from participating and even expressing themselves online, simply because when it gets online, you can be bullied. Like when we look at the history here we have in Kenya, it's not once or twice that people have retracted from using certain social media platform because of the cyberbullying that comes with it. So when we look at the best direction that we can take, or the genesis for us to ensure that we have digital safety, is more of creating awareness on how best we can make ourselves, on also the women who are out here, on how to make themselves safe while they are trying to express themselves, or when they are using their right to expression, and also for them to have proper understanding of privacy, what it means to be private, and also as a data subject, what amount of data is enough out there, or what amount of data should you keep to yourself and not make it aware outside there. Because when we look at some data, it can be manipulated to affect you not only now, because one thing is a fact, the internet will never forget. It may think that you've posted one thing today, but in the next few years it will come back to you. So we might need to now educate them on privacy measures, what is okay being out there, what is the limit point that you need to focus on, not just put everything out there, and practicing proper digital rights. In case this happens, what is the response mechanism that one can use? Over to you, Gigi.
Thanks, Marianne. Rosalind, if you were to assess the state of play, how would you rate the current efforts by organizations and startups to promote digital safety? And in what areas are they excelling, and what areas do they need to adapt?
Thanks, Gigi. Right. So I think I'm still sticking to the thread of how the digital sphere affects folks in real life, and particularly if we consider how in real life there are things like disproportionate access to resources. There are factors such as harmful digital norms, for example, the utility of and the wielding of AI, in as much as technology and the digital realm offer a lot of benefit. These benefits are disproportionately accessed when you include the gender lens. And then also there's the harm side of it is that when you look at the ways in which, for example, AI images are weaponized. They tend to be disproportionately weaponized against women, for example, in the use of their likeness for like and in the access of marginalized communities, for example, the LGBTIQ communities in anti-right spaces. And so because of this, I think that there's multiple opportunities that a lot of organizations can think through that center this real life experience. So in the context of anti-right spaces, in the context of agenda limitations, how is it that folks are centering the communities that are oftentimes on the margins? And this is usually through the product development. So a lot of organizations and a lot of entities are very excited about the creation and the wielding of technology in terms of looking at it from the place of what it can do without recognizing the disproportionate impact or the disproportionate access to the things that it can do vis-a-vis things like extractionism. So at Mozilla, we have this, we have one of the programs we have is called Common Voice. And Common Voice is about language models, and it recognizes the ways in which there's a lot of language models that do not include Indigenous African voice. And so as part of that, and even as we continue the work, one of the things that came up for us is the ways in which when we think about access, who has access to phones? If we're asking folks to contribute their voices and their languages as data sets, who are the people that we're asking, and what kind of information do they have to be able to make informed choices about contributing their voice? How do they connect this back to their ability to utilize? And this you're doing in the context of a lot of African countries, for example. When we look at who has access to digital literacy, I think literacy in general, World Bank puts it as more than 58% of women are disproportionately affected in sub-Saharan Africa, and disproportionately affected when you look at literacy, period. And so when we're creating these things, are we thinking about who it is that's going to access this? How it is that they are empowered to access this. As Marianne mentioned, if you look at the uptake and who is it that's accessing, or who is it that has the financial resources to buy that data, to buy that, to be able to go online and read about why is it that our data online is important. And so the bread and butter for most people is, I want to access a place that is going to offer me internet. And in accessing this place that offers them free Wi-Fi, for example, there's an exchange happening. And so a lot of the organizations will maybe rally around the fact that, yes, this data has been collected, but then there's opportunities to connect the different points. So there's the rallying and there's the campaigning about the need for laws that exist and the policies that exist. But in doing so, how do existing laws center the gender experience, center the marginalized experience? How do existing, and then integrating that, because we can't really lobby for something in like the perception that the digital realm and the real and the manifested realm are separate is part of the issue, because if access and if the lobbying that is done in real life still does not meet up to the threshold that allows for everybody, including and particularly the marginalized, which are the women, which are LGBTIQ communities, and every marginalized community in the context of anti-rights environment, then how then can that translate into the digital sphere? So there's also an opportunity to also resource the creation. So there's feminist principles that exist. These have been shared and these have been known worldwide. There's opportunity to collaborate with funds such as New Moon Fund that centers feminist technology. And that means, are we supporting the builders, feminist builders who are building technology that is supposed to speak to or centers the experience of the end user, which includes and or even targets marginalized communities.
So thank you so much, Rosalind. So Marianne, if you were to advise a room of philanthropists, what would be your 30-second pitch to inspire them to fund digital safety and increases of digital technology for the achievement of gender justice?
I believe for the start, they can start on advocating for awareness and creating awareness. That is mostly reaching out to the grassroots local organizations that are working with some of these women in the most vulnerable areas. For example, working with CBOs and NGOs that are there in the grassroots. That would be an impactful way for them to actually walk the talk and empowering more women in the digital realm. Apart from that, we can also look at the academia bit of it, advocating or investing in academia that not only speaks on the normal curricula that we have, can we also equip some of these students on better ways that they can practice their online safety from an early age. Let us invest and let us spark a candle or a seed and interest at an early age, so that when they grow up, they ideally know this is what that happens in the online realm. Okay, over to you, Gigi.
Okay, thanks so much, Marianne. And I think to wind up this conversation before we go into the questions, because we have 8 minutes, for me and for somebody who's been working in this area, I think funding digital safety initiatives for women is crucial to actually empowering women and girls and ensuring safety, that they can access safely stuff that is online, especially content on how to build their work and benefit from the digital, or reap the digital dividends that are provided online. The second thing I would say is that philanthropists need to invest in digital safety, and therefore by doing that they can unlock the full potential of women in the tech sector. And this can actually lead to significant economic growth and social progress. And again, I'm quoting from our work. And finally, I want to say that philanthropists need to support digital safety to ensure that online environments are inclusive and secure for anyone. We don't want women to sign off the online platforms so that they are not contributing. So we want them to be there, and so that you can have diverse participation from across the communities. We have 6 minutes to go. I don't see other questions.
Gigi,
DJ, you can actually keep going. We're walking towards the top of the hour, so you can still ask the speakers more questions.
Yeah, it's because I was told that the link is 40 minutes. So one of the things I had said is that even if it shuts us off, we can still come back and continue. But let me see if there are questions.
Gigi, as you do so, I would like to maybe chime into Marianne's thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay, please
And
do.
just kind of add on just some thoughts around what else philanthropists could do. And that includes approaches to intersectional funding. So a lot of the times when we think about safety, as I mentioned earlier, it intersects at multiple points. And so how can philanthropists or philanthropic organizations approach the support of organizations and the work organizations are doing in ways that intersect digital security, for example. So digital security in the context of enhancing the literacy and capacity of the organizations that they support to incorporate digital safety and security as part of their strategic approaches and interventions, and to be able to include digital security as, instead of seeing it as this thing that lives in this other realm, or as a separate kind of to-do, seeing it more as interwoven and a part of the ability of organizations to do their work. So not just in the context of protecting things like data of the organizations, but ability for organizations to actually get on the ground and be able to enhance community digital literacy around why is it that data privacy, why is it that data privacy is important? What is it, what does harm look like? Because a lot of folks, a lot of marginalized communities don't even recognize that harm is happening or are very distant from the extraction of their data and what it is that it's being used for and who it is that's benefiting that is not them. Also things like sustained support. So sustained support matters. We've long since recognized there's an importance to move away from project-based resourcing. And that's something that at Mozilla that we're constantly trying to think through and unpack. What does it look like to consistently support work that is engaging at this intersection that is so crucial and that is community-led? Which brings me to my third point around collaboration and movement building. So one of the examples that we've collaborated at Mozilla is, for example, with organizations like New Moon Fund that are centered on just feminist-led, supporting feminist-led work. This includes like builders, this includes advocacy, this includes policy, because I think there needs to be an investment to move away from the tick boxed gender inclusion. So gender inclusion is a sexy word for a lot of entities because it's like just this word that is part and parcel of the policies organizations are supposed to have. But what does it look like to actually have this as an inclusion that is intentional, and that looks like supporting women-led and marginalized community-led organizations, supporting women-led and marginalized community-led building and creation and innovation, and also just interrogating and unpacking the definitions of what knowledge is. So when we say digital security, a lot of times also in the context of our policies, we're thinking about the like the context of like the framing of what it is to intentionally support work and how it is that we can intentionally do so. I think that there's the opportunity for a lot of organizations to also center this in the pitches. So we think about our approach to a lot of discourse, including because of the imbalanced dynamic around resourcing tends to mirror discourse that is elsewhere, right? So it's important to center in on discourse that is relevant to not just the communities affected in the context of the gender disparity, that's for like women, girls, LGBTIQ, for example, but then also the geography. So are we engaging interventions that are relevant to the African continent, to the global majority, or are we centering in terms of our fundraising and our resource raising, and as well as the resource provision, for example, or the resourcing, based on this notion or this knowledge access of digital security as packed in this neat, tidy box that is relevant to a context that doesn't have the same realities as the African continent or doesn't have the same realities as the global majority geographies. Thanks.
All right.
So thank
Gigi,
you.
I'd like to add on.
Sorry, Marianne, you have something to say?
Yes, I'd like to add on what she's mentioned. At times, people don't know this is harm, or they're not aware that this is harmful and this is not safe for them to participate in. So another avenue that philanthropic organizations can participate on is advocating for digital skills. They don't have to be super complex, but minimal or list required for them for the marginalized persons to identify this is something that's against their digital rights in their online realm. So something that they can also invest on is on digital skills to equip them with at least basic knowledge to be able to identify what is harm and what is more harmful. Over to you, Gigi.
All right. I think that's a good way. I see we have questions. I think we can now turn it to Q&A. And I see we have questions from, there's a question from Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Mona Lisa once again. I like the fact that when we speak about digital safety and security, we can't downplay what it means to take into the mental cognizance of it, right? And I always listen to people tell us as a community, I come from a marginalized community of transgender persons, and we have this notion of saying that keep safe online. The fancy English words are also around debrief a little from using online platforms, right? And so I want to understand how you can be able to detach yourself for like a day or a week from using online platforms, knowing very well it's where we get our jobs, it's where the email will be sent on a daily basis, or where the next funding comes from. So when I hear people telling me about debrief and so think about your mental state, it's next to impossible in a capitalistic world. So I just wanted to know, what advice would you give to somebody like me that wants to also take a break, but I can't? Thank
Gigi,
you.
can I take that one?
Okay, Marianne, can you respond?
Yes, I can. Hi, Mona Lisa, how are you? It's the same way that we organize work leaves or we dedicate time for ourselves, is the same way that we can take time to take you're off social media ideally. On a normal day, I'd look at my 24 hours. Can you get to dedicate maybe 2 hours for you to ideally isolate from social media? 2 hours maybe you can look at the end of the day after you're done working. Take those 2 hours to rest and also for you to get away from the social media realm or even the online realm completely. You detach, then re-energize yourself before you get back to it. Also, another thing you can look at is more of organizing maybe work leaves or online leaves when you know you properly planned yourself accordingly, that you know at this particular day you're going to take a leave and you're not going to participate there, and make sure that your work still continues, but at the same time you've taken time to dedicate to yourself and for you to fully detach. So it's more of planning accordingly and dedicating time for yourself for you to recover, because mental health is key. You need to rest. You can't keep working 24 hours 24/7. You need to dedicate time for yourself. It doesn't have to be every day, but you can have your own holy hours just for you.
Can I chime in and maybe
Yeah, please chime in,
um,
Rosalind.
so Marianne, I think that sometimes, and I completely agree, I sometimes consider this a lot, the impact of, and we read a lot of articles that talk about the impact of online engagement, um, and on mental health and why the different harms that happen. We're long past the place where we're just excited about the fact that uh, Meta exists, formerly Facebook, or just excited about the fact that there's TikTok and there's Instagram, because what that comes with is that we're inundated with information. So we are swamped with information, some of which sometimes is actually weaponized against us, which is why there's a colleague of mine is called Odanga. He wrote this fantastic paper on disinformation to do with elections. And there's been several papers that talk about disinformation and how it is used or weaponized against like women political leaders or against women in general, right? Or the ways in which like the use of women's images against them, weaponized in ways in which affect us. And so I'd see it more as an opportunity to, and this this also links back to the conversation we're having around what talking about digital safety in a way that is contextually relevant to our experiences matters, is to the positioning of ourselves as just consumers of, to a repositioning of ourselves as creators and curators of our experiences, right? And so the pushback to you would be, how do you curate? So acknowledging that, yes, it does impact your day-to-day and your bread and butter, but then you have an opportunity to curate what that could or should look like for you. And this is why, again, supporting work that is community-led is also very important, because it is those that experience the harm that know best what is needed um, uh, 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 to address or mitigate that harm. And so if you're able to, what would curating an online experience that best protects? It might not be holistic all the time, because, for example, when you're on Instagram and you're trying to maybe make your money, maybe even have an OnlyFans. That's actually a thing. There's a lot of people with OnlyFans who've been targeted, for example, including female sex workers, for whom that is their bread and butter. But then how is it that you're able to choose browsers, for example, that protect your data privacy and don't keep all your history? How is it that you're able to learn more and educate yourself around how algorithms are utilized, or what it is that is bringing up for you? Because all of this is going to influence what your user experience is like, but then centering more that you are in a position to curate, that you're not helpless, you are a creator, you are an innovator, you can determine. Self-determinance is a part of that, is a part of your safety. And in as far as you're able to, what is it that you're choosing that then you can fix into the pockets that make sense or enhance your experience of safety in doing so?
Thanks so much, Rosalind. So at this point, I don't see any question. Does anyone want to ask a question before we close the Q&A session?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Mona Lisa, go back.
Thank you so much. I'm so passionate about this subject because I feel a victim. So I want to understand, now the new fancy word is AI, right? We are all
Yeah.
jumping on the bandwagon of using AI and everything in its way. It's amazing. And I think, how the previous speaker spoke about how AI is gender biased, because what is normally feeding into the system is the male and the female part. So somebody like me that is a transgender woman is next to nowhere to be seen. Yeah. So I want to understand, how then can somebody like me, who is also trying to get onto the bandwagon of using AI, to be honest, because they tell us it's the future and you can't do away with it, but still be able to give out information that feeds my community, that responds to my community, and then I do not have to be the one that also feeds into the system and contribute to the bias. But then as information is gathered, it's gathered in a binary sense. Yeah. And so I just want to also understand how that can work for me as a transgender person. And then maybe my last question, please, just the last one, I beg of you, is we do activism online. I remember I used to do activism in the physical space, and I was arrested 4 times, 5 times, and I got tired. So I turned into the online space. But with the online space comes surveillance of the person doing this work. And I can't also seem to keep safe, even when I've learned and been part of these trainings on digital safety and what it means. But these are programs or things that constantly need me to put in my password, my PIN, whatever I am, to be able to access these pages or these spaces. Yeah. And so it's also me partly contributing to my unsafety, for lack of a better word. Because then if I don't enable a certain, like, do you give permission for us to keep this information? So when you say no to it, you're not allowed in. And so I also want to understand how to deal with that. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mona Lisa. I think I will ask Rosaline to respond to that because I know they are funding a lot of these initiatives and innovations on AI. And please, Rosaline, as you respond, we only have 8 minutes to go, and we have to hand this over back to the director to do the closing. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Mona Lisa, for your question. And you bring up two important, like two questions, which I'll do my best to summarize. And so the first being, how is it that there can be more gender inclusion that is non-binary? Because you're right, there's a lot of the perception or approach to gender in multiple forums, in real life as well as in the digital sphere, tends to be quite binary. And there's not a lot of, or the discourse that broadens the version or the conversation on gender inclusion and what that means in a non-binary lens is still shockingly or disappointingly quite minimal, particularly on the African continent and particularly in some contexts in the global majority. And then the second was about how to and correct me if I'm wrong, it's how do you access things in a safe way, or these spaces in a safe way, without contributing to the harms and connecting to it in a way that makes sense for you and your community. So both of those are very heavy, very heavy questions that I'm not even sure that I can even give an answer to in terms of like how. But then what I would say is that yes, the surveillance is very real. And there's ways in which, so in as much as we tend to focus on the utility and offered by accessing technology. So when it comes to things like economics, technology has always been or has been a great tool for people to access greater economic advantages, visibility for people to advocate and voice and campaign for their rights. But in the same context, there is the harm that has happened from these things that are offered. And that looks like things like, yes, surveillance, that looks like disinformation, that looks like the ways in which disinformation, for example, is spread on the internet against the trans community and against other marginalized communities that are impacted by anti-rights movements. And so I think that the positioning for this is about how, if you are part of a community or have access to an organization, let's say a trans-led organization, in the fundraising and resourcing for the work that directly impacts the organization, to what extent is there an inclusion of digital safety as part of your resource work or as part of your strategic work as an organization? What are the conversations being had with funders about what safety means and looks like to the transgender community in your geographic context, for example? What does that look like for you? So at an individual level, there are some things that there's a lot of resources. There's if you look at I think the organization is called Security in a Box.
Rosaline, I will please ask you to wind up because of time.
Okay. Security in a Box. Security in a Box is one of such resources that at an individual level could be helpful and useful to you. So I would encourage you to maybe take a look at that.
Okay, thank you so much to both Rosaline and Marianne for the very useful information. Thanks, Mona Lisa, for the good questions. I think on the chat, there's a Google form that you need to fill in. I think it's for evaluation. We request you to do so. And thank you so much for your attention. At this point, I want to hand it over to Monsiun to close it for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG. Thank you for moderating this session and also contributing to the conversation. And I want to say a big thank you to Rosalind and to Miriam. This has been extremely informative. I'm walking away with so much information. I had no idea that my knowledge in this space was this limited until I joined the conversation. So thank you for sharing so much from your experiences. I am not even sure we were able to scratch the surface of this, and there might be a need for us to have a follow-up session. We'll come back to you on that if we're able to fit that into our calendar for this year, and if not, we might work it into the sessions that we'll have in the coming year. But just to say that this is a very important topic, and we need to speak more about it, just understanding that the way we protect ourselves in real life is the way we need to protect ourselves online. And there is, the security is basically the same, and we should pay the same attention to this, and not to take for granted the reality of being online, even though we're not there physically. So thank you so much. And again, it's also useful for us, given our network of philanthropists. It's important that they are aware of the severity of these issues and how women are significantly marginalized, and we need to ensure their safety online so that the opportunities that are available to them are not limited. So we certainly will be taking this conversation back for those that were unable to join. I know that someone asked in the chat section if the recording is going to be available. It will be available, and we'll send to all of you who joined, and would also share with those who were unable to join. And you can also access past conversations that we've had over the past few months. I think we've been at this for about 18 months now. And as Yinka mentioned, I'm sorry, might not have been in this conversation, but just so you know, we have a compilation of conversations we've had over the past few months that we'll be releasing later in the year. So there is a huge body of knowledge that we'll be sharing with you. So thank you once again, and would also like to appreciate our funders, Ford Foundation, for supporting this great and important work. We look forward to having you join upcoming sessions. And I think this is also an opportunity for you to know that the African Philanthropy Forum Conference is coming up on October 27th, or from October 27th to 29th in Marrakesh. So please sign up if you haven't already registered for the conference. We're available to provide additional information about the conference and also events that are leading up to the conference. And also to say thank you to you all for staying on. I think this is the most attended session we've had this year, and it speaks to the importance of this conversation. So thank you for joining us. We look forward to having you in upcoming editions. And thank you, Yinka, for making this happen. Yinka is our program officer who is doing all the work in the background, and to the rest of the APF team for your support. And please fill the evaluation form. Thank you, and have a good rest of the week.